Okay, Shalom bracha, everyone. So the shiur that we're learning now, the shiur is Le'ilu Nishmas Rabbi Chaim Tsvi ben Reb David HaKohen. May this be for the ilui of his neshama. So Parshas Lech Lecha, the Ramban in his sefer on Bitachon, Emunah Bitachon, he writes. He gives perspective on Avraham Avinu, and he says, if you would say that the reason why we as a nation and Hashem we always think about Avraham, we always talk about Avraham, we always daven in the schus of Avraham. If you would say that the reason why we do this is because he knew Kol HaTorah Kula, he knew the entire Torah. Says the Ramban, there were many Gedolei Yisrael, there were many big Gedolei Yisrael who knew Kol HaTorah Kula, and still they didn't get to this level that everyone should be talking about them, and people should be davening in their merit and their schus. So why is it that Avraham Avinu was zoiche? He had the schus, he had the merit that so many years. Klal Yisrael, we as a nation, we always go back and we beg Hashem in the schus of Avraham Avinu, and we always think about Avraham Avinu, and we obviously call him Avram, our father. Why is it? So the Ramban just gives perspective. He says, the only reason why Avraham Avinu was zoiche to this is because he was challenged with 10 challenges, and he was able, and he overcame all these challenges. Says the Ramban, this is the reason why till today, meaning in the Ramban's time, which is obviously in the time of the Rishonim 1,000 years ago, but till today, we always go back and we refer to Avraham Avinu because Avraham Avinu had these challenges, and he was strong, and he was standing strong, and he didn't give up, he didn't chas v'sholem fall apart because of the challenges. So what do we see from this Ramban? We see from this Ramban a huge yisoid, a huge, very important concept in Yiddishkeit, that a person as a Yid, the godless of a Yid, what makes a Yid big? What makes a Yid a godl, a big person is not the Torah that he knows, not the knowledge that he knows, but from the Ramban's perspective, what makes a Yid big is the godless of a Yid is having challenges and struggling through the challenges and being able to overcome the challenges. We see this in this week's Parsha so many times, this concept, how Avraham Avinu was challenged with the most difficult challenges that came his way, and he constantly stayed strong, and he continued his journey, so to say, as a Yid. And obviously, it wasn't only Avraham Avinu was together with his wife, the Tzedekis Sarai, or obviously later on Sarai Imenu, which they both were able to stay and to hold on and not to chas v'sholem give up. At the end of last week's Parsha, the Torah tells us that Terach with his entire family left Ur Kasdim on the way with a thinking to go to Arza Canaan, to go to Eretz Yisrael. So in other words, Terach and his entire family, everyone had this thinking of going to Eretz Canaan. And it says, Vayovoyu, and they reached Ad Choron until the city of Choron. Vayeshvu Sham, and they settled there. And then it says Terach lived for 205 years, and he passed away. In this parsha, it says Hashem tells Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha, the famous psukim, u'me'meladetcha me'beisavicha la'oretz asharek, and Hashem tells him, I'll show you where to go, which we all know that he went to Eretz Canaan. So the Beis Yisrael, the Gerer Rebbe, explains these two psukim, the first part, last week's parsha, the end, and the second part in the beginning of this parsha, both Terach and Avram both left Ur Kasdim. In other words, when they began the journey, they both had the same intention, leaving the old place, which is called Ur Kasdim, and they had this thought of going to Eretz Canaan. But when they arrived in Choron, things were not going the way they wanted. Things were not working out the way they wanted. They had a lot of difficulties that came their way, which gave them, basically, made them not being able to continue their journey. Terach, unfortunately, collapsed. He fell apart. Things didn't work his way. He was going with the thinking of going to Eretz Canaan, and things didn't work out his way. He fell apart. Vayomas Terach, he falls apart. Avraham Avinu. This is Avraham Avinu. He comes to Choron. There are challenges in Choron. Who is bringing the challenges his way? Hashem. He holds on strong. He doesn't give up. And this is when Hashem tells him, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. And this is when Avraham Avinu continues his journey and doesn't give up. Taking this idea of Avraham Avinu staying strong and not giving up, there are so many different parts of this week's Parsha which go back to the same idea of Avraham Avinu staying strong and not giving up. We all know Avraham Avinu and Sarai Imenu, they both were waiting children for so many years, and unfortunately they didn't have children. Avraham Avinu had a child, Yishmael, which obviously didn't bring him nachas. Unfortunately, he wasn't excited about this child, Yishmael. He was always hoping, and he was always davening for a child, that he should be able to have a child together with Sarai. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem promises Avraham Avinu by the Bris Ben Absorim, he will have children. He will have a child together with Sarai Imenu. They'll go through Golus Mitzrayim. They'll go through the exile of Mitzrayim till they get into Eretz Yisrael. The pasuk says a very famous pasuk, V'hamin b'Hashem. This is a pasuk where Avraham Avinu says, the Torah says, Avraham Avinu believed in Hashem. This is in Perek Tezvav, capital Tezvav, pasuk Zayin. It says, actually, pasuk Vav, V'hamin b'Hashem, Avraham Avinu believed in Hashem, vayachshevehu loy, it was considered to him tzedakah. In other words, when Hashem told him, I want you to go out, it took him out, and he showed him the stars, and he said, your children would be like the stars. Avraham Avinu, being the age that he was, which he was very, very old, turning 99 years old, being very old, he could have had a second thought. So many years went by, and I didn't have any children together with Sarah. Says the Torah, V'hemin b'Hashem. If you look on the word V'hemin, it's spelled without a yud. V'hemin b'Hashem, he believed in Hashem, he had Emunah in Hashem. Usually the word Emin would have a yud between the mem and the endonon. In this pasuk, there's no yud. Says the Bnei Yisascha, the Zohar HaKadosh says that the letter yud shows chachma. The letter yud, it's mentioned in Rashi and Chumash by us Yashir, also by the singing, that the letter yud, the ois yud, that tells, it's meramis, it tells us chachma, the idea of chachma. Yud chachma keduma. Yud has to do with chachma. Chachma means that I understand. I'm a smart man. I figure out things. Says the Bnei Yisascha, Hamin in this pasuk was without a yud. The Hamin is Hey Aleph Mem Nun without a yud. Why without a yud? Because Avraham Avinu, when it came to Emunah, he put all his chachma aside, and he had simple believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even though things seem to be going in the other direction, he's already 99 years old. His wife is already old. He had already a son, Yishmael. Things seem to be going in the wrong, so to say, in the opposite direction. he puts away all his chachma, all his own understanding in the ways Hashem runs his world, and he has simple belief. He'emin, without a yud, without this yud, which is chachma. He hemen ba Hashem, just because you got to believe in Hashem. And the Baal Shem Tov, as we all know, used to say, Ich bin anar und ich gleib. Ich bin anar means I am a simplistic person and I believe in Hashem. After all that the Baal Shem Tov was zoiche, all his madreges, all his heilige, very lofty madreges that he was zoiche, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, which we have no beyond, we can't even comprehend who the Baal Shem Tov was. He was beyond. But he says, after all of my madreges, all of my things that I have, I put everything aside, and I'm a simple person. I'm a nar, a simple nar, a very simplistic person, and I believe in ich gleib in the Rebbeinu Shalom. I believe in Hashem. Avraham Avinu he'emin without the yud, without the chachma, just simple belief in the Rebbeinu Shalom. The second half of the pasuk says, "Vayachsheveu lo tzedakah," and he considered it to him as a tzedakah, as a righteousness. So Rashi says it goes on Hashem. Hashem considered this as a tzedakah that Avraham Avinu believed without asking any questions. But the Zera Kodesh, the Rav Shitzer Rebbe, the way he sees these last words, "Vayachsheveho lo tzedakah," he says something profound, beautiful. He says, Avraham Avinu, when he had the Yetzer Hara, the Satan, coming and challenging him, telling him and bringing in front of him all his terrible things that he's going through. You have no children. Hashem told you to leave your father's house and your parents' house. And you're basically you're here by yourself. The Yetzer Hara came and gave him all these challenges. Avraham Avinu stopped and said, wait a second. With all these things that Hashem did to me, there was so much that I could thank Hashem. There was so much that I could be grateful to the Rebbeinu Shalom that he did do to me. The goodness that he showered upon me, so much that he gave me. Should I be now sucked in? Should I fall into the trap of thinking of the negativity instead of the positive? Let me see the half cup that's full. Vayachsheveho lo, Avraham Avinu made a cheshbon. He made a cheshbon to himself. He thought to himself, tzedakah, Hashem did so much righteousness to me, so much goodness to me. He basically showered me with so much goodness. Should I fall into the trap of chas v'sholom thinking negativity? Why? Because I'm 99 years old and I don't have a child. This is basically the essence of Avraham Avinu. Doesn't give up. And this is what the Ramban says. This is why till today, when we ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to listen to us, we say Elokeinu v'Elokei Aviseinu, Elokei Avraham, the father of Avraham, our father in Shemayim in heaven, the Hashem of Avraham. Please listen to our tefillah. This is the way we start the Shemoneh Esrei. Sharing more thoughts about the same idea, how Avraham Avinu was able to overcome these challenges that came his way. We see so many times over and over the same idea with Avraham Avinu, that Avraham Avinu, he didn't have the easiest life. One of the things that Avraham Avinu was challenged by, and this is also the Rav Shitzer Rebbe, the Rav Shitzer Rav Reb Naftali, he says, Avraham Avinu, so many times when he had a few minutes to think, the Yetzer Hara gave him this feeling, Avraham, who are you? Your father was a simple Rasha. Your father was Terach. You come from a father who wasn't the most righteous person. Who are you? Why do you really think that Hashem loves you? So Avraham Avinu was challenged with these thoughts that the Yetzer Hara put into him. Your father wasn't a tzaddik. Your brothers You're surrounded by a family which were not tzaddikim. What do you think you are? Who do you think you are? And Avraham Avinu had to tell himself, I'm not going back who my father is. I'm looking at myself. What are my potentials? What can I reach? How much can I tap in to my koiches, to my strength? It has nothing to do with my father. It has nothing to do with my family. Says the Rav Shitzer Rebbe, this is what the Torah tells us in the beginning of the parsha. Lech Lecha, leave, drop me'artzecha from your land, where you came from. Don't think back where you came from. Don't think back the place that you grew up. Don't think back where your birthplace was. Leave that aside. If that blocks you from serving Hashem, stay positive. Stay focused on the positivity. And this is Avraham Avinu, all the time focused on positivity, on how to be positive. And this week we know the Torah tells us the famous story where Avraham Avinu tried saving his nephew, his brother-in-law Lot, after Lot settled in the city of Sodom. But one thing before that, which is also a very powerful idea, we know that Lot's shepherds were not the nicest people out there, and they took their sheep and they took them into other people's fields. And Avraham Avinu, as we all know the story, Avraham Avinu's shepherds came telling them, you can't do this. And they said, don't tell us what to do. And there was a dispute between the shepherds of Avraham and Lot. In these psukim, we find something very interesting. And both the Shloah HaKadosh and the Al-Shech HaKadosh both say the same idea. It says like this, this is in Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Zayin. There was a dispute between Roye Miknei Avram, between the shepherds of Avram, Uvein Roye Miklaloid and the shepherds of Lot. And then it says, Vakanani Os Ba'aretz. And then it says, Vayomer Avram Aloit. Avram spoke to Lot and he said, Al Nosihi Meriva, there shouldn't be any dispute Beini Uveinecha. There shouldn't be any dispute between me and between you. Let's separate. So both the Shloah HaKadosh and the Al-Shech HaKadosh, they ask, it seems like Avraham Avinu is ignoring that there was already a dispute. Avraham Avinu says, I'll not hear, there shouldn't be any arguments. When you translate these words, it seems like there was no dispute going on, which in the one pasuk before that, it says clearly that they were arguing one with another. So the Al-Shech HaKadosh, the Shloah HaKadosh and the Al-Shech HaKadosh both say a very powerful and very useful idea. They say like this. Say Avraham Avinu, now Avraham Avinu, besides being Avraham Avinu, the big Avraham Avinu who was so connected to Hashem, Avraham Avinu also was very down to earth, so to say. And Avraham Avinu told Lot, keep in mind, if we don't solve this problem, this argument between us, between my shepherds and your shepherds, what's going to happen is there will be such a complex argument going on that we will both not remember how it started, and it will get us totally to be chas v'sholem separated from one another. We will be separated in our heart and physically as well. Rather, said Avraham Avinu, let's separate in time now when the argument is still controllable. So says the Shloah HaKadosh, Riv, the word Riv means argument, Reish Yud Beis, and then there is the word Meriva, which is the same idea, the same root. It has the same root of Riv, Meriva, which is with a hey at the end. Says the Shloah HaKadosh, the difference between Riv and Meriva, Riv is masculine. Riv means lashon zocha, masculine. Meriva is feminine. It's a feminine expression. So says the Shloah Kodesh, feminine, which is nekeva, which is a woman, they give birth. Basically, multiplying is in the schus of the ladies. So through them, there are more children in the world. It's pruah revu, the idea of multiplying. Riv, which is masculine, a zochar, a male doesn't have this koyach, this strength that the feminine, that the ladies have. So he says like this. He says, Avraham Avinu said, we started an argument which is still controllable. It's still riv, meaning it's not paru v'ravu. It's not having, it's not chas v'sholem becoming worse and worse. It's still controllable. Let's separate as long as it's controllable. Let's not wait till it's meriva, which meriva is feminine, in a feminine expression, which means that it has already children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, which is basically that it keeps on escalating, becoming worse and worse. So Avraham Avinu established this idea, which the Torah teaches us, Torah shares with us, for us to learn, says the Shloah Kodesh. So many times in our life, we get into arguments, we have different opinions, we think different than other people. It could be in so many different avenues, so many different places in our day-to-day life. Make sure that it doesn't chas v'sholem turn into a argument which is without control. Stop the argument in time. When it's still riv, when it's still in the level of riv, which means that it's still masculine, it doesn't have children, stop it. And this is what Avraham Avinu tells Lot. Let's separate now. If we separate now, we will still be, so to say, we will be caring for each other. If chas v'sholem, we will leave it, chas v'sholem, we don't know what's going to happen. So again, this is obviously a different idea than we started the shiur with, but it's the Torah is basically sharing with us that Avraham Avinu, he was connected to Hashem, he was serving Hashem on the highest level possible, having this Emunah on the highest level possible. In the same time, he was also down to earth, understanding, appreciating relationships, so to say, and understanding that in order for a relationship to stay in a healthy way, we have to solve the problem when it's still riv, when it's still controllable, not chas v'sholem when things go out of control. There's so much going on, like in every parsha, but in this parsha, which is obviously Avraham Avinu, the first of the Avos HaKadoshim who established Klal Yisrael, there's so much going on this week. One of the things that the Torah teaches us in Perek Tezayin, Sarai Eishes Avram, Sarai the wife of Avram, Lo Yoldaloi, she didn't have children. V'lo Shivcha Mitzris, and she had this Mitzris maidservant, as we all know, Shema Hagar. Then it says like this: Vatoimes Sarai el Avram. Sarai told to Avram, pasuk beis, Hinana, behold now atzerani Hashem. Hashem held me back, miledes, from having children. Boino el shivchasi, marry my maidservant, and maybe in the schus that I'm doing something which is against something that I want to do. It's not pleasant for me to have the maidservant marrying you, but maybe in the schus of doing this, maybe I will be zoiche to have children. But she says like this, Boy no, come now el shivchasi. I'm sorry. She says, Hina no atzerani Hashem. Hashem held me back from having children. The medrash on these words, there's a fascinating medrash on these words. Sarai Meinu told Avraham Avinu, people are telling me I should do all zgulis. I should wear a kameya. I should put on a kameya, and maybe in this schus I'll have children.
People
are telling me
like a special. You like people wear it on their
So again, a kameh is something that you wear for shmira, to be guarded, or to have to have children. So Sori Imenu said, people are telling me, you go start doing skulis, start doing different things that will help you. Put on something, wear something, which will help you have a child. People are telling me, you gotta go and start. Obviously Sarah was very old, but you gotta do more ishtadlus with doctors and refuah stuff. Said, sorry, Emenu, my beloved husband Avram, I believe 100% Atzerani Hashem. I don't buy into all this. Yes, you got to do ishtadlus. Obviously, you got to do ishtadlus. But I don't buy in that all these different things, this is going to bring the salvation to Yeshua. I know it's Atzerani Hashem. It's Hashem who's holding me back from having a child. So I need to go out of my way to do chesed, to go out of my way that I shouldn't have, out of my comfort zone, and bring in my maidservant. She should be a wife, and hoping by bringing in my maidservant to be a wife, which would be very unpleasant, hoping in this schus I'll be zoiche to have children. Now, I spoke about this big tzaddik, Reb Shlomke of Zvil, many times in the Shiur. He was a big tzaddik who lived in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim, and HaKodesh, Reb Shlomo of Zvil. And there's a story which has to do a lot with this idea of going out of our comfort zone and being zoiche to have Yeshuas. So there was a Yid who came to Reb Shlomo of Zvil. He didn't have children for many years. And he begged the Rebbe many times that he should promise him that he should have a child. At some point, he and his wife were both in the room of Reb Shlomo, and they were both crying, and he had big rachmanos on them. And he was thinking for a while, and then he turned to this Yid and he said, you have an amazing sense of humor, which is amazing. Simcha is an amazing thing. But you overdo it too much. In other words, you're always kibitzing, you're always sitting and schmoozing and laughing. You're using your pleasure, the pleasure that you should have from having children, you're using with the kibitzing that you're kibitzing with other people. If you promise me that you will stop doing this all the time, schmoozing with other people and schmoozing and just having all the time laughter and getting pleasure from this, I promise you, you will have a child in a year. And the Yid obviously did that, and he was zoicha, and he had a child, mamish, a little bit more than 9 months. So basically, it's the same idea. So many times, the bracha is right there. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give us the bracha, but we need to step out. We need to do something and step out, so to say, from our comfort zone, that the keli, the vessel, should be completed for bracha, and then the bracha would be able to be chal. The bracha will come, the shefa will come. And Sarah, this is what he tells us, the Medrash, to Avram. It has nothing to do because I didn't do this school, I didn't do that school, I didn't go to this doctor, to that doctor. It's Hashem, Atzerani Hashem, and maybe in the schus of me going out of my comfort zone, bringing in my maidservant, and seeing day in, day out that my maidservant is now the wife of my husband. I'm sorry, the wife of my husband. Maybe this will get me to be zoiche to have children, which we know that she was zoiche to have the Heilige Yitzchak. So Avraham Avinu, one of the things mentioned in this week's parsha is the famous story with the kings, where Avraham Avinu, and this is where I started before, Avraham Avinu wanted to save his brother-in-law, his nephew Lot, and that's why he got himself into this war with his 4 very mighty kings, and Hashem made a nace. He threw the sand, which the Gemara says, and it turned into spears, and he overpowered these 4 powerful kings, and he was able to take Lot out of captivity, which unfortunately the last 2 years, we were very involved in this idea of Nebuch, hostage. So he was able to take Lloyd out of hostage. In the Pasuk it says that Avraham Avinu gathered 318 men from his youngsters of his house as an army, and they chased these four kings. Everyone knows the Rashi that it was, according to one opinion in Rashi, it wasn't 318 men. It was one person, Eliezer, which is the gematria of 318. But the Talmidah Baal Shem Tov, and this is many of the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, they say this idea. They say that the word siach, which is sin, yud, ches, siach means tefillah. So the Talmidah Baal Shem Tov, they say, you know how Avraham Avinu, he won this war? He won the war with the main koyach, the main strength that he won the war was siach, because he davened, because he put in effort in tefillah. Obviously, he did his shtadlus. He took these people, he gathered these people, 318, or Eliezer, whatever it is. He did his shtadlus. He threw the sand for his shtadlus. But the main ishtadlus wasn't the physical ishtadlus. The main thing that he did was siach, which is the gematria of 318. This is the main focus that he had, was siach, to daven to Hashem. And because of the koyach of siach, of tefillah, he was zoiche to what he was zoiche. He was zoiche to overpower these four kings. So now, talking about tefillah, there's so much to talk about tefillah. But obviously, Avraham Avinu, he was the first one who came up with tefillah shachris. He was the first one who came up with this idea of davening. Before that, the idea of tefillah, before Avraham Avinu, the idea of tefillah didn't exist. It wasn't the idea of the Indian of tefillah. The Indian of going and putting an effort into tefillah, people didn't do that. Avraham Avinu was the one who established this idea, and he came up with the tefillahs of shachris. Now, according to the Riyah Kodesh, not only that he came up with shachris, he also put in the koyach in tefillahs mincha and ma'ariv. But he didn't. He let these two tefillahs for Yitzchak and Yaakov, that they should be the main pillars of establishing the tefillah. But Avraham Avinu, so to say, he was the first one who was like he brought it into the universe, this idea, the idea of three tefillahs, of davening 3 times a day, but it wasn't established yet before Yitzchak and Yaakov. So we see Avraham Avinu, when it comes to tefillah, Avraham Avinu was the Tati, which his focus was tefillah, and this is what got him through life, and he was able to overcome so much of his challenges. When Avraham Avinu goes down to Mitzrayim, it says in the Torah, on the beginning of the Parsha, Avraham Avinu comes to Eretz Canaan, and there was a famine, there was a hunger in Eretz Canaan. Avraham Avinu goes, he basically leaves Eretz Canaan, and he goes to Mitzrayim. The Medrash says, when Avraham Avinu was on the way to Mitzrayim, people asked Avraham Avinu, where are you going? We thought that you were planning to settle in Eretz Canaan. He said, yes, but unfortunately there's a famine now, there's a hunger in Eretz Canaan, so I'm going to Mitzrayim. What made you go to Eretz Canaan in the first place? People asked him. Hashem told me I should settle there. So people were basically laughing and talking Rachmana litzlan apikursis and telling Avram, you're serving Hashem, who's basically now making a famine, Rachmana litzlan. Hashem promised you'll be wealthy. People challenged him. People challenged Avraham Avinu, says the Medrash, with all sorts of challenges. What are you telling us? You're telling us that Hashem promised you'll have children, you'll become wealthy. What's going on? Look what's happening. You're going to Mitzrayim. Avraham Avinu did not budge the slightest bit. He stayed the same Avraham Avinu. He stayed the same servant, serving Hashem with the hem and without a yud. Believe in Hashem without any chachmas, without going into any understanding why this is happening. Now, we all know the long story by Paroi kidnapping Sarah Yemenu. After this story, Paroi gave Avraham Avinu a lot of wealth, and Avraham Avinu became very wealthy. When he came back, it says when he was on the way back from Mitzrayim, going back to Eretz Canaan, people were then like, whoa, this person is a wealthy man. When we thought that, what he kept on telling us, that Hashem is promising him that he will become wealthy, we thought it's not going to happen. Look, it's going to happen. And Avraham Avinu Dafka wanted these people to see his wealth, because he wanted them to appreciate not everything is instinct. Not everything is answered right away. There are so many times when we have to go through a lot of different challenges, nisyonis, until we are zoicha to get what we want to get. And Avraham Avinu Dafka says the Medrash, when he went back from Mitzrayim and he showed the people the wealth, he showed the people what he got from Mitzrayim, because he wanted people to appreciate. At the end of the day, Hashem kept his promise, and now he has the wealth that Hashem promised him. Now, to just finish up, to end up with one more vart on this week's Parsha, I shared before from Sarah Yemenu that she said, Atzirani Hashem, Hashem is the one who held me back from having children. There's a sefer called Sifsei Tzaddik. He was a grandson of the Chedusha Erim. He writes in his sefer, he says, there are two ways a person could accomplish things in life. There are things that are accomplished through derech hateva, through nature. And then there are things that are accomplished in the schus of relying on Hashem and the schus of davening to Hashem. Things turn around. He says the difference between being very involved, putting a person's head into nature, into the teva, and relying on Hashem and putting in the koyach into tefillah, he says, is like night and day. He says, because when you are in teva, when your focus is in teva, then maybe you will be saved from whatever you need to be saved, but it would be through a lot of effort and a lot of different things that will come your way. He says, but when a person has a pure belief in Hashem and he davens to Hashem, things could turn around way quicker. Shaloi kederech hateva. It could be beyond nature. And Lamaisa, he says, look what happened at the end to Sarah and to Avram. Things turned around 180 degrees, and they were zoiche to Yitzchak, which they were zoiche to see nachas from Yitzchak, and they were zoiche to see the Yiddish nation as a nation. We should all be zoiche, that we should always be able to have the koyach to overcome the challenges that come our way. We should be able to overcome the voices that the Yetzer Hara puts into our brain and tells us, who are you? Where do you come from? Or it tells us, yesterday you were not serving Hashem. Why do you think today you'll be able to serve Hashem? Just like Avraham Avinu pushed everything aside and he basically went full force forward, and that we should be zoiche to have Emunah, Hemen B'Hashem, without chachmas, and have the koyach, and have the seichel and koyach to daven to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and may Hashem answer our tefillos, and we should be zoiche to lots of gezunt, parnassah, nachas, to wonderful Shabbos Kodesh, and hopefully very soon in Yerushalayim, Yira Kodesh, with Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mheira b'yomeinu, amen.